Good morning. How are we doing? Glad to have you here at Peace. If this is your first time as a visitor, please know that you are welcome. If this is your 100th time being here as a member, we're glad you're here. Today, as we get started, I do want to remind everyone to grab these books on the end rows and pass them down so that we can all get signed in. We'd love to follow up with you if you're new, or just know that you were here and to celebrate with you. If you have prayer requests, they're also in those books as well, so that we can share those. I'm on. I can hear myself. I know I'm on, Bob. Can you hear me? All right. How about now? Are we getting better? No? We're good? Okay. Now I'm on. So if you're going to make me louder, does that mean that I get to be more energetic too? Oh, well done. I am taller. 5'2" girl likes being taller. So good morning. As we get started today, we do have a few announcements about upcoming fun that's happening here at Peace. It's a busy month this October, November time. So please know that this is not all that's happening. Make sure you check those bulletins this week for more that's happening, or if you want more information on any of these. And as always, make sure to check in with the welcome desk if you have questions. Today, I hope a lot of you had a chance to get into that empathy discussion with Marie. It's quite a gift, the members that we have in this congregation, and so I'm glad that Lydia was able to get her to come and speak with all of you as well. This is really kind of the big kickoff to making sure that we have things for all of our adults as well as our youth and children every week. So as you go through the month, please make sure that you check into Fellowship Hall every Sunday between services to see what's happening in there and what our topic is. This week it was just a really wonderful one on empathy. Coming up this Wednesday is Miriam Ministry. This is an invite to all women in the congregation. Here at 9:30, they have some food, some coffee, some conversation. Please come and join them. You are all invited, whether you have been or whether you have not. You're invited to come and join this ministry group of all of our women at the congregation. This is the last week for Rags to Riches, which means go through your closets this week, not Sunday. Go through them before Sunday so that you can bring them here on Sunday. They get picked up as early as humanly possible on Monday morning. So it's not that you can drop them off Monday morning. At that point, please take them home and hold on to them. We are working on that office rebuild coming up, and so there is no space to store them until the next year. So please make sure that you go through your closets this week. Take this opportunity. Find what you have that doesn't fit anymore, that's stained, that doesn't work. Whatever it is, if you want to get rid of it, get into Rags to Riches before Sunday so that you can come in, drop off your bag, and we can go from there. As well, this week is also the beginning of our weekly community meals. We invite all of you, invite your neighbors, invite your friends, come and have a meal with us. It's going to be a really wonderful time together. This week it's chili, so thanks to Ed and Stacy for really taking the head on this and really bringing us into it. It's going to be a wonderful time to really be in community together. You'll hear more about that today, and hopefully next week you can tell the person sitting next to you, I went on Wednesday and it was really great, or did you go Wednesday? Let's really make this what we're about. Go ahead and go forward for the next. Coming up on that busy weekend, I talked about it last week. It is a busy weekend. Saturday, you're going to go in the morning to help the women's shelter to prep for fall, bring a rake, make sure that you sign up at the front desk because they do need to know exactly who's coming. That night, you're going to come back to church and you're going to play bingo. Who here's played bingo with the drag queens before? It's a great time. Invite your friends, invite your neighbors. It is a wonderful time. Bob, will you tell us more?
All right, we're going to be having Drag Queen Bingo next Saturday. We'd love to have you all there. It's a Halloween theme. We're going to have, it's going to be costumes are encouraged. We're going to have prizes for the best adults and the best children. It's $10 cash to get in. We're hoping to give away over $500 in cash prizes. All of the money goes to the church. Some of it's going to support the youth group and their mission trip. Hope to all see you there.
Yeah, so make sure that you do come for it and wear your costumes. because the costumes aren't done. You can wear them that night for bingo and then get up the next day, come to church, bring them with you because Fall Festival is Sunday afternoon, next Sunday. So it's a big day for lots of fun. We are still looking for some volunteers to help run the games. Please talk to Stacy. Wave your hand over here if you are willing to help with that. Of any age, wear a costume, don't wear a costume. It's a really fun time. It's a really wonderful way to be together and do some new things. It's cheap fun. The tickets are cheap. The food is enjoyable. And it's just a great way to be together and celebrate fall before we have to finally use the costumes for Halloween. So use it Friday or Saturday night, use it Sunday, and then go out on Wednesday and trick or treat. How's that sound? Sound like a plan? As we continue on, we do want to let you know about one of the ways that we raise funds here at Peace is through smile.amazon.com. Debbie, take it away.
So I'm not sure how many of you are aware of it, but there is a program called Amazon Smile. So how many of you use Amazon to purchase items? Okay, you can use those dollars to help support Peace Church. One of the efforts that we're going to be doing is kicking off another capital campaign to finish off the admin suite and to pay off the loans that we had to take out to do this beautiful work that we have out here in our narthex and in our fellowship hall. But for those of you that use Amazon, there's a program called Amazon Smiles. And what it does is there are certain products, and if you look in the product description, it'll let you know whether or not it's eligible for Amazon Smile. And so what's going to happen is when you purchase those items, 0.5% is going to be coming back to Peace Church. So it's just another way that we can raise monies with the anticipation of Christmas coming up and just birthday celebrations, or just because you think you need things. I want to make this aware for you. It's very easy. If you go into Amazon.com, put things in your cart, the key is you're going to have to then jump over to SmileAmazon.com. That's the only way that you can go for those items to come back to Peace Church. Your items will still remain in the cart, and you can purchase those items that way. One thing that Beth pointed out is if you're used to using the Amazon Smile app on your phone or your tablet, unfortunately, the SmileAmazon.com will not work. So I'm going to force you to use your computer for those situations. And when you do that, it's going to ask you for the charity that you want to apply that to. Make sure you select Peace United Church of Christ, Rochester. There are several other Peace churches out there. I'm not sure how many of you are aware of that, but we want to make sure that it comes back to us. So anything that you can do to help support this church and its ministries and to help offset our building costs is greatly appreciated. One thing that I wanted to mention with the previous announcements is the bazaar is coming up on second week in November, thank you. My days are just all mixed up. We're not going to be able to bring in your donations for that until November 4th, the first Sunday in November. We've got a lot of big events that are happening in the fellowship hall. We're going to have a sign, so we're just going to ask you to bring those donations and place them on the west wall in the fellowship hall. The Mamma Mia cast is already rehearsing and getting their blocking out for their performances in December, so we just want to make sure we keep the stage clean. But I know the bazaar folks are looking for help in the kitchen, and they're also looking for donations of bars that they can sell during the bazaar. If you're interested in doing any of that, please see Claire at the welcome desk or sign up for that. They would greatly appreciate it. And then we're going to move into some joys and concerns. And for those of you that don't know, the reason you don't see Pastor Paul here today is unfortunately his mother passed away very early on Friday morning. She'd been suffering from Alzheimer's for quite some time, and it was a blessing that Paul was able to be there when she took her final last breath, to be there with his family. The funeral is tomorrow. I am planning on going down and representing the church, but I do have 2 cards at the welcome desk. If you want to sign those, I will take those with me. They didn't want any flowers. They just wanted to offer donations either to the church where the funeral is going to be held, or for the home where his mother was staying for quite some time. So if you want to drop off money, that's fine. If you want to do it yourself, that's okay. But I will be making a donation on behalf of the church for that. And then the other thing I want to point out is, I'm not sure if it was in the green bulletin, but we've got a member of our church who's going to be turning 100 next week. Dorothy Culbertson is a resident over at Samaritan Bethany. They are going to be having a beautiful birthday party for her next Saturday, but I would really love to shower her with all the gifts that this church in love through cards. So if you could either just drop off a card here at church at the welcome desk, I'll make sure it gets there, or if you want to send it directly on behalf of Dorothy Culbertson over at Samaritan, that would be great. I just want to show her that we here at Peace Church recognize her beautiful milestone and show her the love that she deserves. So that's it.
Yeah, it certainly is a wonderful day for her. So I was already scheduled to preach this Sunday before we knew that Paul's mother was going to pass, but I really am grateful that he was able to get down and see her on Thursday and Friday, and so I hope that you all join me in sending our best wishes his way. As we come together today, we do so in memory of Paul's mother, but also in the joy of Dorothy's birthday, and so much more that brings us together, that makes us stand together and be the people of peace. So will you please stand as you are able and join us in singing Rising, because we need to be a part of this community that rises like the sun into the sky. Will you please join me in prayer? Jesus Christ, we hear you waiting in the streets of this city, in our places of worship, in the places for all. God, make us friend or stranger. Let us find ways to be caregivers, active and concerned and healing just like you. God, call us into this work with the words you taught us so long ago. Our Creator, who is in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our sins, as we forgive those who sin against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. Because we are the very next thing on God's mind. Come on up, kids. If you'd like to come join us, you are welcome. Others are welcome as well. It is a great Sunday today. We having fun today? Yeah.
I have trains and dinosaurs.
You have trains and dinosaurs today? And sharks? Wow, that's a lot. So this week we're gonna do some word stuff. So at the first service, you see some words up there? Yeah, there are letters all around us. So this week I want to talk a little bit about what this whole season is that we're in. In October, we talk about this whole stewardship season. Maybe you've heard your parents talk about it. Maybe you haven't. But you're going to have to do the word for me. You have to repeat after me. Ready? Stewardship. Stewardship. It's a big word, right? Do you have any idea what it means? Do you think your parents know what it means? What do you think it means? Take a guess.
Take a guess.
A guess? Actually, you're going right on. Even if you did think I said a different word, eh?
I went camping.
You went camping. So when we welcome people or we go camping with people and we enjoy that time with them, do you think we get anything?
I went in Grandpa's car and drove up for ice cream.
Your grandpa gives you ice cream? How come your grandma doesn't give me ice cream?
Because
Why do you think that is? Why doesn't Isaiah's grandma give me ice cream?
you're not his sister.
Because I'm not in his family? Oh. So do we always get things do we always get given things because of something we did? Because we asked, yeah? What happens when you really, really, really want a special toy? You be good. Were you good before you got or wanted the special toy? No, not always?
I did.
We're talking some real honesty today. Just be aware, your parents may be grabbing this DVD later and using it against you.
I went towards the
And so you wanted something and you took it. So when you want something and you do something good, or you maybe give an extra hug, or you use your manners all of a sudden, or maybe you clean your room spontaneously, but really it's because you really want something. Does that happen to any of you? Do we always get something?
First, then I went.
Sorry. No, we don't always get something first. Sometimes we just have to give things because it's important to us to give them.
I went.
So,
ice cream
do you think you can
first,
give ice cream to your grandma?
Yeah.
Yeah? Do you think she would like that?
Yeah.
Do you think you can give things to your friends, to your family, without wanting something in return? Yep. Yeah? Maybe not. Mackenzie's a little bit more doubtful. I accept that.
You take care of my shark.
I take care of the sharks.
So, when we are trying to give things away and give of ourselves, very often we want something back. But we have to work on why we're doing something and what our faith story calls us to do. Our faith story calls us to give. Our faith story calls us to laugh. Our faith story calls us to have conversation with people. Not because we want to get a laugh in return, or not because we want a gift in return, but because the giving act is the idea. So every year, when we talk about stewardship, it's the big word. Ruth, we're using... I did this at first service, and I told the 6 kids to go tell Ruth that they knew what stewardship meant. Did any of them tell you? No, nobody found you? Okay, after service today, you're going to take everything that you learned about today in church, and you're going to go tell youth what stewardship is. Can you do it? Yeah. Think so? Maybe you can go this week and figure out what it means to give things to other people this week. Can you do that? Yeah. I like your enthusiasm. So will you guys be in prayer with me?
Prayer.
Dear God,
Prayer.
we give you thanks. And we accept the gifts of others for all that we can give with open hands and open hearts. Amen. Go ahead on back to your families. So, as I did mention, we are in stewardship season. We've been using this red love image with the work of heart, labor of love, which is really our theme this year. And today we have the gift of hearing from Wendy Nevela and really hearing her story and hearing what brings her here. Because it's not just about money for the church. That's not what stewardship is. Stewardship is knowing what our gifts are. And Wendy is definitely one of our gifts. Wendy, will you come share with us?
I have to first say, you have to really hand it to Ruth Larson. She's gotten me up here twice, and we've only been members here for 3.5 years. And it's definitely not my love of public speaking that made me agree to do this. So I just want to share that I grew up in Montana on a wheat farm, and I spent those long, hot summer days in the grain truck dreaming of going to college and having, I hoped, a career of some kind in science. So I did. I went to college, I got married soon after, and in the spring of 1991, at the age of 23, my husband and I loaded up all our possessions and our 6-week-old twin boys and moved to Minnesota because I had a job opportunity at the Mayo Clinic. We settled in a house and bought a house and settled in, and by the fall of 1994, I was separated and in the process of divorcing my emotionally abusive husband. Even though I knew it was the right thing to do and my future depended on getting out of that relationship, I was very scared to embark on a future as a single mother. I was really more scared than I would have ever admitted. Money was tight, and I was convinced we were just one broken appliance away from financial ruin. But we had a home, I had a good job, and the deepest love for my boys. As I lay awake at night and worried I would be able to provide adequately for my boys, I promised myself that I would do whatever it took. I would sacrifice and do without to ensure that my boys had all that they needed, and with a little luck, at least some of what they wanted. So from then on, wherever I went, I had my two little companions by my side. We spent our weekends swimming at the Y, playing at the parks, and going to the library where we literally checked out every video about every motorized vehicle known to man. We learned how to build everything from roads to houses to skyscrapers. Of course, our weekend excursions also included errands like buying groceries and going to Target for necessary household supplies. You remember when Rainbow Foods was on one end and Target was on the other, and it was just so convenient, so that's where we would go. After we'd found the things that we needed, the boys would always ask if they could go look at toys, so we made our way back to the toy section in Target, where I watched as they wandered the aisles for 10 or 15 minutes until I said it was time to go. I'm sure there were always plenty of things that they wanted, but somehow they knew not to ask. And I think they probably asked once, and when that didn't go so well, they decided best not to ask again. But on about every third trip to Target, maybe once a month or so, I would tell them that they could get a new Matchbox car. They'd grin from ear to ear and then carefully choose their 99-cent treasure. Once home, they'd get out their small collection of cars and carefully organize them. Police cars at the police station, fire trucks at the fire station, and so on, and spend the better part of the afternoon pushing their cars around, making sound effects only little boys know how to make. We settled into a routine, and I was often overwhelmed by the fact that we were doing just fine, and the boys seemed happy and well-adjusted. I'm sure by now you're asking yourself, what does this have to do with stewardship? But I promise I'm getting to the point. You see, I'd married into a Catholic family, and I did what every dutiful young wife and daughter-in-law would do. I became a Catholic and signed the piece of paper that I would raise my children Catholic. I remember waking up one Sunday morning filled with dread about another Mass in the big impersonal church I was going to, where honestly, I don't think I knew the name of a single person. Then I thought to myself, I'm not in a Catholic family anymore. Do I dare find another church? I found a weight had lifted off my shoulders, and I committed myself to finding another church. I'd grown up Lutheran and decided it made sense to start there, and we began to go to Lutheran churches on our side of town. We went to a few, and then one day I walked into one, and there, like a beacon of light, was the Green Lutheran Book of Worship. If you're not Lutheran, you don't understand, but I nearly hugged it as if I'd found a long-lost friend. During the service, I stood up and boldly proclaimed what I believed in the words I'd been forced to memorize during confirmation. I believe in God the Father Almighty, maker of heaven and earth. I believe in the Holy Spirit, the Holy Catholic Church, the communion of saints, the forgiveness of sins, the resurrection of the body, and the life everlasting. It felt great, and I realized that in my uncertain world, I desperately needed the certainty of those words and my faith in God. After the service, people actually said hello, introduced themselves, and so I joined that church. I was all in, and for the first time since my high school youth group, I felt part of a faith community. I made new friends, I volunteered my time, and every Sunday the boys and I attended church. I wrote a check for $10 to put in the offering plate. And believe me when I tell you, I often considered not writing that check, thinking to myself I could go out for lunch or maybe even find a new shirt on a clearance rack somewhere. Who would know the difference? But then I remembered the comfort the church had provided me at the time I needed it most, so I gave that $10. When stewardship time came around and I considered making a pledge not to only give $10 on the Sundays that we attended church, but also on the Sundays that I didn't. It was a scary and uncharted territory for me. $520 a year, I wondered if I could really afford it. As I prayerfully considered making the pledge, I thought about how being part of that community made me feel and decided I should make that commitment. So on Stewardship Sunday, I bravely and proudly put my card in the plate, and I've never regretted taking that leap of faith. In the years since, my life has been richly blessed. Over the last 27 years, I built a career at Mayo Clinic, better than I dreamed of on those summer days in the grain truck. The second time I was smart and I married a nice guy, and next year we'll celebrate our 20th wedding anniversary. Together we've built a wonderful life and had the joy of raising another son. And the little boys, well, they're all grown up. They have wives and lives of their own, and they've grown into men that any parent would be proud of. So I guess that young, scared mother did just enough things right. And recently, when I've had a chance to talk to the twins privately, I asked them in those years when it was just the three of us if they'd ever felt deprived. Andy simply said no. He's a man of few words and doesn't care to elaborate ever at all. But when I asked Sean, he said absolutely not. He said he'd felt safe and loved, and he specifically recalled those days at Target when he got to get a new Matchbox car as some of the happiest days of his young life. So it just goes to show you that less is usually more. When I reflect on those days, I remember that by necessity life was simple and yet filled with plenty of joy and contentment. I realized finding that church that brought me comfort and reminded me of my foundation in faith was the center of it all, and I'm glad I found a way to give back even when I wasn't sure I could. So if this place, our church, has ever given you solace in times of trouble, celebration in times of joy, if you've ever enjoyed fellowship, and maybe even on occasion the sermon, and believe in the mission of this church, I encourage you to take that brave step and fill out a card on Stewardship Sunday. Start small if you must, but make the commitment, because I believe that together with our pooled resources and the help of God, we can change lives and positively affect the community outside these walls. Anything is possible, and I promise you one thing, you will never regret it.
Thank you, Wendy. God, we offer these gifts, and more than that, we offer all that we are, that we might fulfill these words, your call to this world to bring love and wholeness to all. Amen. As we continue in prayer, I invite you to hear these words, to sing these words for the one. Will you be with me in prayer? Today we bring into this space all the concerns, the grief, the challenges, and more than that, the love and joy that we know is there. We know the prayers listed in our hearts. We know the compassion that's needed in this world. We know your call to us today, God. And so we invite ourselves into that spirit of wholeness and healing. We ask prayers for a young teenager from Barron, Wisconsin, that they might be found alive and returned to her home. For those in transition in their lives and the caregivers as they seek to provide support and love. For all those who are struggling with addiction and homelessness, hunger, anger, and fear. God, be with us as we struggle with those things ourselves, and be with us as we find ways to care for those who are experiencing trauma in their lives. Today we ask for prayers for Ray and for Herb, and for all who are on our hearts. For Paul and his family. And for the joy of Dorothy's birthday, we invite this day. For the joy in all of our hearts, the blessings, the new birth, the creation that is in and amongst us, we pray and bring to light. Amen. Amen. This morning, our scripture reading comes with several images as well. So hear these words and see these images. From Mark 10. James and John, the sons of Zebedee, came forward to him and said to him, "Teacher, we want you to do for us whatever we ask of you." And he said to them, "What is it you want me to do for you?" And they said to him, "Grant us to sit one at your right hand and one at your left in your glory." But Jesus said to them, "You do not know what you are asking. Are you able to drink the cup that I drink, to be baptized with the baptism that I am baptized with?" They replied, "We are able." Then Jesus said to them, "The cup that I drink you will drink, and with the baptism with which I am baptized you will be baptized. But to sit at my right hand or my left is not mine to grant, but is for those for whom it has been prepared." When the 10 heard this, they began to be angry with James and John. So Jesus called them and said to them, "You know that among the Gentiles, those whom they recognize as the rulers lord it over them, and their great ones are tyrants over them. But it is not so among you. Whoever wishes to become great among you must be your servant." Whoever wishes to become great must be your servant. "And whoever wishes to be first among you must be slave of all. For the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve and to give his life to liberate the people." Liberation. Bob, will you click to the next slide for me? This week, our gospel story continues on from last week's story of the rich man who was told to do an impossible thing, where the disciples are now requesting an impossible thing. When you heard this passage today, what did you hear in the request of the disciples? A request for a place in Jesus' cabinet when he comes to power? Maybe a directorship of a province or some other political gift bestowed on those who are trustworthy to the end. But in typical Jesus fashion, he turns the request back upon poor James and John, tells them that to receive the gift, they must be servants. It's a big request of them. Much like the call to the rich man to give it all away, they're being told that even though they think they have an awareness of God, they have yet to see it. So imagine, if you will, the table James and John think they will be seated at with Jesus. Something stately, gold inlaid perhaps, perfectly set in a room filled with fabulous art and servants ready and waiting. This might be the table they imagine at with Jesus when he is in his glory, but in reality, that glory comes in the guise of death. That cup which they request to drink is bitter. That baptism is not a gentle riverside dunk to cleanse, but a trial and the carrying of that cross that brings pain. So now imagine, if you will, the table Jesus is inviting them to. A well-worn table ready for serving and assisting those in need. If you want to be great, he says, be servant of all. Everybody can be great because anybody can serve. You don't have to have a college degree to serve. You don't have to make your subject and verse agree to serve. You only need a heart full of grace, a soul generated by love. These words were said by Martin Luther King Jr. At St. Gregory of Nyssa Episcopal Church in San Francisco, California, they live out those words. That second table we imagined every week. In the same room where they partake of communion each week using the same table, they feed more than 400 people by providing space for a food pantry that the neighborhood relies upon. They don't ask for faith first. They don't speak the creeds. They engage the people waiting in line in humanity. They share a smile. They share the good news through boxes of fruit, vegetables, and other goods. Food is the good news because the church has taken the call to be servants for all. They work to live out the call of Jesus here to James and John and to all the disciples and followers throughout the years, because they believe that food is central to that message. Thousands of years ago, early disciples put down the rituals of the early house churches in a small text known as the Didache. What the text tells us is that in communion, early Christians involved a full meal. It wasn't just a taste like it is for us, that small bit of bread, that small bit of cup. It was these elements, but surrounded by a meal, made by the community for the community. Those with little at home could partake and be filled, if just for one day. Those with more could provide more, but would still be filled at the end of the day. In this way, the early Jesus followers fulfilled the commandment to be servant for all. And it is to this vision of communion that the community of St. Gregory provides the food pantry space. Can you imagine the symbolism in their faith story that the communion table be part of the food pantry? So what are the disciples asking for? Well, we might hear them asking for power in our political view of their world. Actually, they're asking for a piece of the action. They may not see it, but they're asking for a place at the table of life and seeking Jesus' blessing to go forth. The best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others, Mahatma Gandhi once said. This week of the stewardship campaign was defined as the time to talk about food ministry. Clearly, it makes sense. This Wednesday is the start of our community meal night, so it's well timed. But more than that, it brings us back to why we're doing this. In all that we do, because love wins in the end. Not just this food ministry, but why we do ministry at all. We are called by Jesus to be in the work of servanthood as religious action. Jesus did not come to bring power, to rule over others, to replace Caesar. Jesus came to do something else, to call us to something else. And yet we still tend to treat him as a wish fulfiller much too often. Verse 45 says, "For the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life to liberate the people." Liberation is what Jesus is after. The New Revised Standard Version, which we typically use, uses the word ransom. Gave his life in ransom for the people. And in the Message version, the word used is held hostage. So hear this verse. "This is what the Son of Man has done. He came to serve, not to be served, and then to give away his life in exchange for many who are held hostage." So to what are we held hostage? Ransom, hostage, liberation. All three of these versions go together to tell this week's story. That ransom, that's something of value given in order to liberate a captive, a hostage. But what particular captivity is highlighted here in this story? It's not a captivity to demonic forces. It's not a captivity to a debt owed to God. It is not a needing to be saved. We are held hostage, just as it was for the early followers and disciples, to self-centeredness and to conventional notions of power and prestige and supposed greatness. Last week's story of the rich man fits this same pattern and helps us fill out the picture of the situation Jesus intends for us to set us free from. Following Jesus means liberation from the prison of self-absorption. We are opening up to God and to neighbor in humility, in generosity, and in love, which is to say, opening up to true servanthood. This is what Mark pointedly, repeatedly underlines, the dignity of servanthood for the sake of our liberation, our learning to follow Jesus on the way of being a servant to all, with grace and love. We are hungry for more in our lives, and we can start to feel like the disciples asking for things we don't understand, because we are starving for God's justice and peace. And it seems like begging for it will make it happen, but it's not. We engage in ways we hope will help, but then second-guess ourselves and commit to nothing, blaming it on time or not knowing or not being in the right place or knowing other groups are already doing that work. You are what you do, not what you say you'll do, said Carl Jung. When we are held hostage by time or fear or lack of knowledge or any number of possible no's in our minds, we are immobilized and lose track of our divine call to the table of liberation. That table of liberation is here in this place. So what will our table of liberation look like this week? What captivity might we dispel with a simple meal of chili and conversation on a Wednesday night in Rochester? What faith statement might we make when we eat together? Or maybe the question is, who else needs to be invited to this meal? Who is held hostage to the world and in need of liberation, of a place without judgment where you can truly and fully be whole? We say each week, every single week, that we will be a place that embraces all, builds community, and transforms lives. And we do this by growing faith. Faith in God, certainly that's part of why we are a church, but more important than that, we grow faith in humanity. That's what this week is in stewardship. Growing our faith in humanity, growing our faith in this place. So who's hungry? Are we ready for the meal Jesus has prepared us for? Will you please rise as you are able? Every week we say the call to serve the world, and it is no more important than this week. Because as we embark on this ministry, we are asking to find our place in the world, because this is our church. Others will feel welcomed. It is doing and will do a great work. It will make generous gifts to many causes. It is and will continue to be a sanctuary for social justice and for God's peace. Advocate for marginalized communities and practice peace in every setting of my life. It is and will be a church that embraces all, builds community, grows faith in humanity, and transforms lives. If I who make it what it is, practice these things. Therefore, with the grace of God, we shall be a safe and inclusive church living God's radical message, and I shall dedicate myself to being all the things I want my church to be. Will you please join me in speaking and singing louder than before so that we might spread this vision?